Hello everyone, welcome back to another Nextcloud video. Today I'm going to show you how to install Nextcloud on Ubuntu 24.04 LTS with very detailed steps. This installation guide is targeted for the production setup, focusing on Nextcloud performance and security. I have completed the setup with 14 steps, and all these steps are divided into 3 phases. First, we did the basic Nextcloud installation. Then we focused on increasing the performance. And finally, we applied the security measures. If you follow the guide step by step, you will end up with a high performance and secure Nextcloud setup. And if you have any question or need clarification on any step, please leave a comment on the video. I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you find the video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. All right, now let's get started. So before the installation, we need to create our VPS. Then we need to configure our DNS, and we will verify that our hostname is resolvable. For this installation, I'll be using a Walter VPS. So I have logged into my account. Now let's create the VPS. Click Deploy Server. We are selecting the Cloud Compute Shared CPU and the New York Data Center. And the operating system will be 24.04. And for this demo installation, 2 vCPU will be fine with 2 GB memory. But for the production setup, we need to assign proper resource for the server. Right now, we don't need the auto backup. And also, we can disable the IPv6. Okay, let's name the system nc.mailserverguru.com. Now click Deploy Now. It will take some time to prepare the system. We have to wait for a few seconds. Okay, now it says running. Let's see the details of the system. Normally it takes time to prepare the whole system, so it's better to wait for a few seconds. By this time, we can configure our DNS. Let's copy the IP. Let's go to our DNS. I'm using the Cloudflare DNS. Now let's create a record for the server, and the hostname will be NC, and this is the IP. I'm not using the proxy right now. Click Save. So this IP should be resolvable by this time. Let's check from the MX toolbox. Okay, so we can see the IP. So our server hostname is resolvable. Now let's log into the system. I'm using the mobile Xterm as my SSH terminal. So let's create a session. Click SSH. Root terminal setting. Let's increase the size of the font. Okay. It is asking for the password. Let's copy the password from here. So we are successfully logged into the system. Now let's check the operating system's version. So it is 24.04. Let's check the hostname and the FQDN. Now let's check the IP. Okay. And at first we need to disable the EFW firewall. We will apply the security later. So now we are good to go. Let's go to my blog. Then we can follow the instructions here step by step. So at first we will do the phase 1, the basic Nextcloud setup. So in this phase, we have 5 steps. First, we will do the system update and upgrade. Then we will install the Apache and PHP modules. Then we need to configure the MariaDB server for the Nextcloud database. Then we have to prepare the Nextcloud archive. And finally, we will install Nextcloud from the CLI. Now let's do the update and upgrade. This is always recommended. So sometimes package installation takes time, so I will pause at that time. Now this step 2. We will follow as is. Okay, the Apache is done. Now install the PHP modules. Okay, so the PHP packages installation done. Now let's enable the modules. Some modules are already enabled. That is not a problem. Now restart and enable the Apache. Let's check the Apache status. It should be running. Okay. Now check all the modules are loaded. Now you can see all the PHP modules are loaded already. Now let's go for the MariaDB database installation. Okay, so MariaDB package is installed. Now let's log into the MariaDB server. You can copy and paste all the code here. First, it will create the user for the Nextcloud database with the password. You should use a strong password. Then it will assign the character set, and we are giving the full privileges on the Nextcloud user. Now you can paste all the code here. So our Nextcloud database is created. Now restart the MariaDB server. Now we can check. Okay. Now let's download the Nextcloud package. So the archive is about 230 meg. Now unzip the archive. We can safely remove the archive file, that is for sure. Now we need to assign the ownership of the HTTP user. Okay. Now we will install Nextcloud from the command line. It will be silent and faster than the web GUI setup. So for the CLI installation, we need to provide the admin credential. First, let's go to the Nextcloud folder. Then we need to copy the full OCC command. Now we can execute. If everything is okay, it will install within a second. So it says Nextcloud was successfully installed. So our basic Nextcloud installation is done. Now Nextcloud allows access only from the local host. So we need to provide our FQDN to the configuration file. Okay. Now we need to instruct Apache to load Nextcloud from the var www.html Nextcloud folder. Now copy the directory options. Okay, we are done here. Now we need to restart the Apache. Now let's open the Nextcloud from the browser. We need to provide the admin credential that we have provided on the CLI. So the Nextcloud setup is already done and it asking for the enabling various features. We can safely skip right now. So this is the dashboard. You can customize the dashboard from here. You can enable, disable any option. You can access your files from here. So these are the default files and folders. Let's see the photos. These are the default media available on the photos. Okay, so now let's check the settings. It should show us some recommendations about the setting and configurations. So it is checking all the settings for the security and setup warnings. Now you can see a lot of warnings that we need to fix. So it says the accessing site insecurely via HTTP. So we need to enable the HTTPS. Then the PHP memory issue. Server has no maintenance window start time configuration. Okay, some headers. So we need to enable the strict transport security. So for the transactional file logging, we will be using Redis. No memory caching. So most of the errors will be gone when we configure for the performance and for the security. Okay, so let's back to the configuration. We will proceed for the second phase now. On the second phase, we will work for increasing the Nextcloud performance. First, we will install and configure the PHP-FPM. PHP-FPM is faster than the Apache's npm prefork module, which is used by default to process the PHP files. Then we will create the info.php file so that we can see from the browser all the PHP extensions or modules are loaded properly. Third, we will enable Opcache and Opcache-JIT. Opcache is a caching engine for PHP. It stores precompiled script bytecode in shared memory. So purging PHP scripts on each request won't be necessary. It increases the PHP file execution and website loading performance. Though Opcache is enabled by default, but we need to enable the Opcache-JIT, of course. And Opcache-JIT, or just-in-time compilation, this feature improves PHP performance by compiling the code into machine language at runtime. It enhances the performance of CPU-intensive tasks. So JIT will be very effective to increase the Nextcloud performance. Fourth, we will install the APCU. APCU is the user data caching. It is a local cache for the system, and Nextcloud uses these for memory caching. And finally, we will install the Redis cache. Redis is used in Nextcloud for local and distributed caching, as well as for transactional file locking. We used APCU for local caching here, which is faster than the Redis, and Redis will be used for the file locking purpose. Okay, so now let's execute the second phase of installation. Let's start from the installing PHP-FPM. We can copy and execute all this code, no problem with that. So we can see that PHP-FPM is loaded and the socket is created. Everything is fine. Now let's disable the mod PHP and prefork module. And enable the PHP-FPM. Now we have to restart the Apache. Now for file upload size and some performance settings, we need to tweak some PHP INI settings listed below. We need to edit in this file. So you can assign your own values depending on your environment. So this is some typical value that I have assigned. Now, before modifying, let's check the current values. So these are the values. Instead of manual change one by one, we can execute the below command to change all the values at once. So it will save our time. Now, if you check again, you can see all the values are changed. Now we need to update the PHP-FPM pool configuration. This is the location of the pool configuration file. Below are some optimum values, but you should assign your own values based on your environment or requirement. So again, we can check the current values. Now let's change at once. So we can change manually, but with this script, we can change quickly. Now we need to restart the PHP-FPM to take effect. Now we need to insert this below code to Apache's default site configuration file so that Apache can use the PHP-FPM to execute the PHP files. Now let's edit the default site configuration. We can copy from here. Okay, now save it. Now restart the Apache. Okay, so our PHP-FPM configuration is done. Now let's go to the step 7. Create the info.php file. This is not a performance setting, but it is required for the monitoring of the PHP modules. So we can copy. This is just simple code. Okay, now it says to browse the info.php. If the PHP-FPM is enabled on the PHP, it will show server API FPM fuzz CGI like this. Let's check it. Here you can see server API FPM fuzz CGI. So the PHP-FPM is loaded. Okay, now enable the Opcache. So Opcache is enabled by default. So we can check this from the info page. If we search for Opcache, we can see that Zend Opcache is running, but the JIT is disabled. So we need to enable the JIT. So Opcache enables CLI. This option is not mandatory, but would be very useful if we use Nextcloud CLI command or scripts frequently. Now restart the PHP-FPM again. Now if we reload the page, and we can see that JIT is on and the Opcache and Opcache CLI both are enabled. We can also see the Opcache-JIT compiler setting and the buffer cache size also. All are loaded into PHP configuration. Now let's install the APCU. Okay. So we need to enable the APCU on the CLI. Now restart PHP-FPM and Apache. If we check the APCU section, now we have to reload, of course. We can see the APCU support enabled, APC enabled, and APC enabled CLI also on. Okay. Now configure Nextcloud to use the APCU for the memory caching. Let's change the Nextcloud configuration. Okay, now let's install the Redis. Now start and enable the service. Okay, now configure Redis to use Unix socket, then ports, of course. Let's modify the configuration. If we make it 0, then it will not listen to any TCP socket. Then we can provide the socket path and the Unix socket permission. Now we need to add Apache user to the Redis group. Now configure Nextcloud for using the Redis for file locking. Let's copy the code. We can paste here. Okay, now save it. Now enable the Redis session locking in PHP. If we search session, so before that, if we search these on the info page, you can see that we don't see any Redis session here on the PHP. Let's copy and paste here. Now we can restart everything. Redis server, PHP-FPM, and Apache. Now if we reload again, Ctrl F5, you can see the Redis session all are loaded. So our enabling the performance modules and everything are loaded on the PHP. Now if you check the Nextcloud warnings again, you won't see any file locking issue here. So our Redis is working properly. And these are still the security warnings. So next we will work for the security. Then we will see that these errors will not pop up again. So now we will work with the system security. So here we have 4 steps. First, we will install the SSL. We will be using the LetsEncrypt for that. Then we will enable the HTTP2 protocol so that Nextcloud can be loaded synchronously. We will see it on the browser. Second, we will apply the strict transport security so that Nextcloud can be loaded only with the HTTPS. Then we will enable the pretty URLs. Pretty URL will remove the index.php from all the URLs. We will show you that. Then finally, we will apply the IP tables firewall for the system security. Okay, so let's apply all that. Let's start from the step 11, install SSL. So we need to install the certbot utility for that. Let's install. Now with the certbot command, we need to apply for the certificate. We need to enter the email address. So we need to agree with the terms and condition. Press yes. Set Y again. Successfully received the certificate and it's applied the certificate. Now if we reload the Nextcloud, it should redirect to HTTPS. So you can see connection is secure. And if we check the certificate, here is the LetsEncrypt certificate. Now we need to enable the HTTP2 module. And we have to enable the HTTP2 on the SSL site configuration. So if available, it will use only the HTTP2 at first. Now let's restart the Apache. Now we can check the URL with the car. It should redirect to the HTTPS site. Yes, it is HTTP2 302 redirect. Now if we reload the Nextcloud, let's inspect first. Network. Let's Ctrl F5 to reload the page. You can see the protocol all are HTTP2. And if you see the waterfall, all the contents are loaded synchronously. So our HTTP2 is working fine. Now we will enable the strict transport security. So we need to edit the SSL site configuration again. And we need to copy the code here. Okay, now save the configuration. Now we will enable the pretty URL. If you see on the browser, whenever we are clicking on the files, it shows the index.php here. Then if you go for the photos, here also it shows the index.php. By default, it is part of the full URL of Nextcloud. So we need to remove the index.php to make the URL more prettier or shorter. Let's edit the Nextcloud configuration. Copy the one-liner. We can place here, no problem. Now save. Now we need to execute the command. It will update the htaccess file. Okay, so htaccess is updated. You can see if you click on other URL, so the index.php is not appearing here. So the pretty URL is also working. Now we will work with the system firewall. By default on Ubuntu 24.04, the UFW firewall is applied. UFW is a front end for the IP tables, so we provided the sample IP table rule to work as a basic firewall. You can apply more rules to secure the Nextcloud system based on your requirement. We need to copy everything from here, then we can create a executable script. So on the firewall rules, first we flushed the rules, the IP tables, then we flushed each of the NAT and Mangle tables. Then we allowed the loopback traffic. We only accepted the established and related connection. Then we are accepting all the outgoing traffic. Then we allowed the 2280 and 443 port, which is used for the SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. Then we allowed the ICMP, and we are not allowing any SYN flood. So we provide the SYN flood protection, and we limitize the for the ping flood. So the ping response is limited here. And we have provided some rules here for the IP spoofing protection. And optionally, we logged some dropped packets. So these are the basic rule here. You can enhance the security by applying more rules based on your requirement. Now create this script file. And copy everything from here. Paste here. Now we need to provide the executable permission. And we can execute or run the script. Now, if you see the IP tables, here you can see all the rules are applied. Now, to save the rules so that it can persist across all reboots, we need to install the IP table persistent and netfilter persistent. So it is asking to save the IPv4 rule. Click yes. And IPv6 rules, we don't need IPv6 rules right now. Okay. So let's enable and start the netfilter. If we do any sort of change here, then we can save the rules through this command. Let me show you by putting one rule. So we are dropping all the packets destined to 81 port from any source. So if you see currently, the rules will be shown here. But if you see the files, you won't find that rule here because it is not saved yet. So if we do the IP table save, now if we check again, you can see this rules is applied here. So one important thing here regarding the SSH port, you should only allow your trusted network to access the system. So this is it. We have done our configuration. We have completed all these 3 phases. First, we did the basic Nextcloud setup. Then we did the performance tuning. Thirdly, we work with the system security. So now you can enjoy Nextcloud securely. So this is it for today. Thank you. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.